We mentioned the losses that we're seeing in Meta today. Part of that has to do with the downgrade that the stock got from Atlantic Equities. The analyst there lowering his rating from overweight to neutral, also cutting his price target to $160, well above where it is trading today. Rochelle, lots of questions just about the metaverse, Facebook's pivot here, its total rebranding. You know, year to date, the stock's still off 62%, even with the product announcements and the partnerships announcements that we just heard from Ali. Clearly, Wall Street is not totally on board.
I mean, and you have to wonder, when you look at the price tag, not just of what Meta has now invested in trying to make this pivot to the metaverse, that we have no idea in terms of the time horizon when we'll actually see it. When you figure $1,500 for a headset on top of everything else, it's, as Ali said, you're creating tech for something that's not actually here, that's not got wide mainstream adoption at the moment. I do have concerns, obviously, when it comes to the timeline and what Meta is doing right now. It's a long play. We're seeing, some of these plays, things like Roblox, other companies wanting to put a foot in the door, but certainly not investing to the extent that Facebook is. And at a certain point, shareholders are going to want to see some returns on this investment. But those might not come for, as some analysts have told us, 10, maybe even 15 years.
It is remarkable, the downfall of one of the great companies on the planet. And back to that headset real quickly, the Wall Street Journal with the review said with the short battery life and the price tag, it's out of touch with reality. And the Washington Post called it the meh, as in M-E-H, metaverse. So not great reviews for what they hoped would dispel some of the bad news, including the downgrade from Atlantic Equities, which cited not just the metaverse, but the ad market out there is in a really bad place. And as we talked about with Brent Thill last week, he said, look, going into a recession, that is the first thing people cut. And Meta is already falling behind Google, and everyone is falling behind TikTok. So if we had a recession, that's the first place they're going to cut. So what do you like about Meta right now? The metaverse doesn't look good. The ad revenue doesn't look good. I don't know what the bearish with the bullish story
yeah,
is.
Exactly. Well, I don't think Wall Street, I don't think there is a lot to like about it when you take a look at the performance that we've seen here today.
And the privacy changes. I forgot about that.
Just over 60%. The privacy changes, like you mentioned there, a $1,500 VR headset. I get the concept of it, trying to make it more accessible, trying to entice creators and working professionals to adopt this vision that Meta clearly has of a virtual future. I just don't know if it's going to be enough, and don't think it's going to do the trick just in terms of getting people on board with the metaverse. I think that $1,500 price target, price tag, maybe I'm wrong. That is just too expensive, and it's a little bit too much for people to pay out when they're not even sold on the metaverse yet, Rochelle.
And I thought it was interesting that if the idea is that they want people to use this in the workplace, then what did people come back to work for, to then sit there with a VR headset on? It's sort of like moving in the opposite direction with where the future of work seems to be headed. And I mean, and when you look at Roblox, which is also considered a mini metaverse play, their stock also not doing well. And we saw that they were rated underweight in new coverage at Barclays as well. They're saying that the platform, it still was a primary beneficiary of the pandemic when everyone was stuck at home. But again, once you're now out of the worst of the pandemic, where do you go from here? Yeah. And I think this is something that Roblox is just that microcosm of what some of the challenges that Meta is going to continue to have.
Boy, you look at that stock chart for Meta, 4-year low. And that note we mentioned, Atlantic Equities says they're going to lose an additional 5% market share in the next 2 years from a position that is already an ugly one for Meta. October 26th, earnings. Excited?
I am excited.
It's going to be an interesting one for us.